Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Ooh, we're black and white.
They call me the man in black.
I'm the good girl. That sounds sturdy.
That's weird.
That sounds sturdy. But I meant
I'm the
like
bad boy.
I know, it sounded so bad. But I was just thinking now they always make the good character dress in white and the villain. You're the villain.
Am I?
In this podcast.
In this
recording.
marriage, I always am. Always getting blamed.
Oh.
Nah, kid. Hey, you know what? I was conked out in a nap before this.
Me too. I was like, why does he have to take a nap? I'm ready to go. And then I just slowly
faded away.
Mm-hmm.
Gone. Oh, well, I'm back. I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to talk about today? What do you want to do, huh?
Well, I was thinking about something that I've been processing lately is the concept of certainty.
Ooh.
Maybe like when life feels stable versus when something happens that creates uncertainty in your life.
Right.
Where, here's an example. The nation is in a little bit of uncertainty now that elections are coming up.
Yep. When that happens every 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's really because certainty, there's different levels of it, right? So like once a president becomes president, there's a little level of, even if you hate that, there's a little level of stability.
Yeah, okay, we know what's happening as far as
for the next 4 years. It's pretty much this is
probably going to be this person parked there.
Yeah.
And whatever from that point forward happens.
Yeah. But when uncertainty happens, which again, every 4 years for the president, then everybody has a lot of feelings about what's going to happen. What is this going to look like? And a lot of it has to do with things that impact our ability of what we imagine our future is going to be.
Right. Because we have very strong expectations of what we think things are going to look like, what we want them to look like, some of the control that we want to have over them.
Yes.
And especially when things externally happen that kind of like run into us and cause us to maybe not be able to have that full control. I can send us spiraling pretty bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, they said that, okay, so there's like a healthy balance you need of things being stable and safe and then new and adventure. That's a healthy balance. You need both things to thrive in life.
So that you don't completely get bored.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, there's some adventurousness. You don't always know what's going to go on.
You don't feel trapped. But you also need some things that are stable.
That can stabilize you so that you're not like in constant threat mode,
chaos and panic. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking about this a lot and like the process of how do you get certainty in uncertain seasons? Like what do you do when things are up in the air? And I've thought about this before because when I was younger, I thought once I have a career, then I'll be set.
Yeah.
Then I'll know forever what I'm supposed to do and exactly how things are supposed to go.
If I can just get married.
Then I'll feel stable and secure because that relationship will be the same forever. And then you'll like have that to hold on to. Or if I make enough money, then I'll finally feel
much money
stable
in the bank account. Or if I have this type of job, specifically a very specific job, which you've reached that goal within the job, like, I'm good once I hit this point.
Once I hit this point, then I'm untouchable.
Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about my uncle. I remember this concept really freaked me out when I was younger. And now I feel much more at peace with it because I'm more at peace with the ebbs and flows of life.
Yeah.
But my uncle won 9 Emmys, was like at the top of his game. He was a music composer for a hit TV show. He was the head music composer, like I said, and had won 9 Emmys. And then when that job ended, because the show ended, he couldn't get another job.
Yeah, there wasn't like something that should assure him a life of stability and certainty.
He was the head person on a hit show and did great. And then it was just like the way things fell, that career path dried up. And so then he had to pivot and find a different career path. But the concept was I couldn't fathom at that point in my life. Like I was like, oh, he's set now. Mm-hmm. He's set for good. He'll never have to feel these feelings of transition again. He'll never have to feel these feelings of wonder and like what is next and how are things going to look again. And it's just not true. There's never a place that you get in life where everything is just laid out fully unchangeable for you.
I think that there was something that was really set up inside of my system when you and I got married. Mm-hmm. Because when we started that adventure, there was so many adventures happening all around the world for everyone because it was 2008. And all of a sudden, the financial crisis hits and you watch the world start getting shaken.
Absolutely.
Everywhere. And as we were traveling around the United States, we got to have conversations with people that were having their own personal meltdowns about some of the instability that was happening for them and the uncertainty of the times. And I thought it was very interesting for us because we were in a lot of uncertainty, but it wasn't necessarily attached to the financial,
the global world.
Yeah, we were kind of like young and just like, we're just going on our trip.
Yeah.
Our uncertainty was whether or not we were going to make it each day with each other.
Well, and we had no idea what we wanted to do with our lives back then.
And that for me was one of the things that caused a lot of anxiety of like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm going to be. I don't know what's going to happen with our marriage and the direction that that's all going to go. And I remember having deep panic surface in that season. And I know that for me, I went to doomsday. That I used to live out of utter doomsday. And that was
when you'd feel uncertainty. So when we talk about uncertainty, it's like, you don't know what you can count on. You don't know what is going to be stable. You don't know the pathway forward. You feel insecure. Like you're not quite sure. It's almost like to me, if there's an earthquake happening in the room and you don't know what furniture you can grab a hold on that would be steady for you, that's kind of what it feels like.
Well, yeah. And then for me, when times felt unstable, I would start going down doomsday, right? Thinking about all the worst case scenarios.
I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to be homeless.
And all of those were unto me trying to regain control even inside of that. Because
interesting.
If I could imagine the worst case scenarios, then I could start planning backwards. Okay, worst case scenario, I've lost all my money and we're homeless. Okay.
What do I do?
What do I do in this scenario now? All right. I have these friends that have these couches that I can get on. But then, even while that was happening inside of me, I was like, but that's not realistic for me to do anymore. See, I could go down that pathway for me as a single male.
Yeah. I remember you saying this. Now that I'm married, I can't just stay on people's couches if we lose everything. So what are we going to do?
And so.
You didn't know that I would have stayed on a couch with you.
I didn't. Well, you know what? It's not that I didn't imagine you'd stay on the couch.
It was that you felt like that'd be horrible.
Well, yes, I think that hit like there's no way as a husband that would be okay for me to allow my wife to be stuck on someone else's couch.
Right.
Now I'm like, if that happened, it's an adventure we're both in. But I look back at all of that and I was like constantly realizing that so much of our desire for certainty is, again, this external control system where I actually had an immense amount of stuff that needed to be dealt with internally inside of it. And I was spending a lot of time externally processing, and it actually was an invitational season in the uncertain times and the times that felt unstable to actually ask myself, what are the things that I'm bumping into internally that actually are trying to make their way to the surface and liberate me out of this?
So your concept was, I can allow this uncertainty inside of me to shake things up.
Yeah.
And expose what's going on inside so that I can actually transform some things in there.
Yeah. And it ended up becoming an invitational experience. Like our whole first part of our marriage was all this invitational experience to face my insecurities, face my fears that I'd been living in, face the broken lies that I believed about myself. And there was something about embracing uncertainty I began in that season. And you said something that was really actually great.
Ooh.
Yeah, very, very profound.
Tell me.
Like for me, I wanted to run towards productivity and uncertainty. Mm-hmm. That was my form of control. Like maybe I can make something happen, even if I'm being somehow productive.
Which I actually like. I think that's a cool skill. Like when you feel scared to get stuff done. I think that's
rather
cool.
than going completely comatose.
Yeah. But you were like just spinning, but not even really getting that much done. you were just living in torment, but not producing anything tangible.
It's very real. And you were like, what if being productive was actually getting present inside of the relationship? What if being productive was learning something about your heart today? And I actually reassess, like when there's uncertain times externally, I can actually be very productive and take my power back by going internal.
Yeah. I
can deal with this thing inside of me right now. And if I become a better expression of love in this, a better expression of who Justin is inside of this, then this has been monumental for me. And this moment wasn't wasted.
Yes. So it gives you a sense of control, a sense of certainty. You're like, I can do something on the inside if the world around me is changing and I don't know
that's where I'm finding
happen.
Stabilization is I can at least connect to my own soul and begin to manage that and work through whatever's coming up inside of it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think for me, there's been so many different seasons of transition for us.
Yeah.
And I think transition brings up uncertainty because you're basically what's happening. I remember I had this job. I had so much favor in this job and I was getting so many opportunities. And I had so many people be like, you are like the golden child right now because of where you're at. And I knew that I had to quit that job. Like I knew for my own sanity, my health wasn't doing good. Right. I knew that it was important for me to end that. But in the job, when you have a job, you have certainty about your near future. But I can see what the next steps would be. I could see how it's going to unfold. Like a lot of things in life are illusions that bring us comfort. Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. A lot of it's an illusion.
When I had the job at this church, I had this illusion of this is my life path and this next step goes to this next step goes to this next step and I know exactly where it leads and I'm on that path. So it feels like I know where I'm going. And so much of life is about this internal vision to feel like we can see a good future. Mm-hmm. And so when I decided to quit that role, all of a sudden, I had no vision for what was going to happen and where it was going to go. And it was that lack of vision that actually was more painful than the transition season. Because when I couldn't see how my life was going to move forward and unfold, then I went into panic.
Did you feel hopeless?
Yes. I was like, there's some lie that we believe that if we can see how it's going to work out, then it will work out.
Right.
But if we can't see how it's going to work out, then it's not going to work out. It's very weird. I think also it's like, if I can see it, I can make it happen.
Right.
But if I can't see it, then I have to be out of control. And so I remember, letting go of the role, having no idea what was next, no idea what was coming, no idea how things would transpire. And then my whole life got thrown forward that year. Every area of my life got better, got more fruitful, got more favor. I had more favor than I'd had the year before. And things just fell into place in my path that I could not have seen had I stayed in the job the way that I was. But there's that moment when you're out of the old, but you're not in the new yet.
Yeah.
Where all you feel is the ground shifting and the grief of what you thought you had.
Yeah.
And you haven't moved forward yet into a new season of certainty. Because that's the truth. Every season of uncertainty, you end up in a new season where things stabilize out, where you find a new normal, where you find a new pathway, where you begin to feel like, oh, this is what this next season's going to look like.
Yeah. What's fascinating to me is in instability or uncertainty, we've been programmed in a very interesting way to believe that we're participating really well if we have fear. So one of the,
oh my gosh, this is so good.
One of the main questions people always ask when there's uncertain times or instability is, I said, well, aren't you worried about what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
So it's this sense, there's this injected question of like, well, aren't you at least worried about it? Like, aren't you at least playing your part? Like, clearly there's not a whole lot you can do, but you can worry. So aren't you at least worried about this? And so from a very young age, there's something programmed inside of us that we're playing our part by going into anxiety rather than finding a place of peace.
Yes.
And for me, one of the things that I started having to do is learning how to become intimately acquainted with peace and believe that peace was actually a proactive, productive posture to align with.
Right.
So it went against so my nervous system being out of balance said I was doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So to settle my entire nervous system and say, I'm okay and this is all going to work out. Like other people be like, you're doing nothing. No, I'm doing everything. I'm managing my soul.
Mm-hmm.
I'm settling my system and I'm operating in a place of trust that there's actually that my history so far tells me I'm okay.
Yes.
And I'm going to build from that history and say that in the worst, messiest times of my life, I made it through and I'm way better off now than I was before. So this moment right here tells me that if I enter into peace, I'm going to do even tremendously better than I did before.
Well, and scientifically, now we can talk about how it works in the mind and your body. So scientifically, when we're in threat, we can mobilize into energy that's heightened. So immobilized energy would be fight or flight, which means I'm going to figure out how to fight my way out of this, or I'm going to do everything. I'm going to spin my wheels to figure out all the solutions to get to the next step. This is how I'm going to handle it. And what you're talking about is actually settling yourself out of that energy.
Yeah.
And here's why it works. Because when we are triggered, we see less options. When we are regulated and at rest and at peace, our mind is more open to possibility. Our mind sees more pathways. And this is the crazy thing is, so when you're triggered is the hardest time to make all of the right decisions forward because you only see a couple paths.
Yeah.
When you're less triggered, you can see multiple paths. You can see multiple options. You can see things that weren't there. And so it's so valuable what you're saying, actually learning how to get to peace, how to get to a center place, because then that actually opens you up to all of the things that could be coming. Oh, just throwing things around there, to all of the things that could be coming into your life in that season.
Yeah. And I think that part of it too, like in order to get to this place of peace, one thing that I had to do repeatedly was let go of my expectations of what things were going to look like. Right.
Oh man.
So even the expectations of how I hear a lot of people when they're in instability or uncertainty, they're like, they start imagining this is what it's going to look like of how
forever. Well,
there's two sides of this. What this might look like forever, which causes it worse off. But they also start getting expectations of this is how I'm going to get out of it. So someone's going to come pay off my debt, or I'm going to get a job in this way.
Or this is the one job that I need that will fix it. Well, we make up a lot. We're often making up reasons for why something bad happened.
Correct.
So it'll be like, well, I lost this job because I'm going to get this job and it's going to be this thing. Or I went through this breakup because they were the wrong person for me and I needed an entirely different personality. Or we make up why something happened that was bad.
Yeah.
And then we try to hold on to the next vision we have for what will fix that. This new job will fix that, or this new relationship will fix that, or whatever. Yeah.
And then when it doesn't start playing out that way, we get hopeless. We feel more out of control. We get more fear. We feel like we're failing. We're doing something wrong. So there's some idea where we have to actually begin to settle into, I don't know how this is going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that right now I have uncertain times.
Mm-hmm.
Things feel unstable.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thrust into some form of an adventure. And right now I'm going to figure out how to get to my peace and get connected to the experience that's at hand in front of me. And I'm going to figure out how to manage my inner world.
Yeah. I was thinking about how this is really true. Even I have a friend right now and they're thinking about moving. And they've gone through a lot of trauma, and trauma makes uncertainty so much higher stakes because trauma reminds you, a lot of trauma that happens knocked you off of certainty. Like something that you thought could never happen happened, or something that, it knocks you off of certainty. I know for me that happened like when my parents got divorced. All of a sudden my world was so unstable because I didn't think that that was going to happen. Or when my mom got Alzheimer's, like that took away the certainty of imagining a future where she was going to be able to be my mother. And you actually have to grieve the thing that is being taken away.
Right.
You have to grieve the certainty that is being removed. You have to grieve the loss that is happening. So for me, it was like, okay, my life is never going to look the same.
Yeah.
Like home is never going to be home.
I've just had a transition that's changed the way that things were. I can't go back to that now.
Yeah, that it will never be the same again. Or like when we sold our family home that we lived in for 37 years, I'm like, that's a piece of certainty. It's not even that I loved that house so much. It's just that was what I knew, and that's where we always went to. And
represented the stabilizing point.
Well, it was like I know when I go back home, this is where I'll go to visit.
That's not there.
Yeah. I know what family gatherings will look like because it's been the same. So all of a sudden they get divorced and the home is gone. I'm like, I have no idea what holidays will be in the future. I have no idea what family gatherings will be in the future. So I think it's very important to grieve what is changing, what is no longer. There's no way that you can move through the process of uncertainty without grief. That is a core emotion. And you have to be able to say, I had this and it felt nice. And then to be able to say, and it's sad that it's no longer. And I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to find a new normal. And I think we always forget while we're in the middle of transition and everything feels like chaos. So the old is gone. We're like in the phase. The new is not yet. I think we think that middle phase is going to last forever.
Yeah.
The phase where we don't have the old or the new, and it just feels like things are in chaos. We think this is going to last forever, but it never does. You establish new normals. You find new holidays. You find new places. You find new homes to go to. Like there's just things that start to become a new normal. And I didn't know that when I was younger.
Yeah.
I really did think those moments of uncertainty would last forever and those expectations would last forever.
I think that on that note of the change and stuff, I started embracing the idea that life is seasonal. And so that's such a simple thought, but it's profound when you embrace as an idea, the life that I'm living is a seasonal one. I will have seasons that will ebb and flow. Seasons of relationships, certain relationships will always change. The way that I do life, the work that I'm working on, all of this, like we are such creatures of like wanting to feel that sense of safety. So we go to habitual behaviors, trying to keep ourselves very like limited within our box. And we actually have to fight the gift that life is trying to give us, which is a personal evolution of ourself, a growth into who we're made to be. So a lot of times we will fight in our fear to stay within this box.
The same.
Instead of being like, no, life is for me. Like once you get into a celebratory attitude, it's true that there's a sense of grief that has to be grieved for some things that change.
Yeah.
But there also is this sense of like, if I'll embrace a celebratory attitude of that life is for me, there's a better expression of me that's been hidden within, and more authentic expression of me has a possibility of coming out as change comes with each and every season, whether that's a change in friends or a change in locations or or relationships, whatever it is, it's like actually for me. And that's something that changed dramatically in me, was this idea is that life is for me, change is for me. So I'm ready for it to happen when it happens.
Yeah. And we both worked on choosing that belief. It's not.
Yeah, I had to build that in.
The way that our beliefs work is we gather evidence to prove. And we can prove that life is for us, or we can prove it's against us.
Yeah.
We have enough evidence on both sides. Everyone does. There's not one person out there that doesn't have evidence on both sides. I think about this guy that we followed years ago who was homeless and realized he could be thankful for the pencil that he owned, because that was the one pencil he owned. And he started looking at what he did have, that he could go to the library, that he could own a pencil. And he transformed his life and became a multimillionaire. And it started from his perspective changing at that place. All of us have evidence to prove that things work out for us. Yeah. And all of us have evidence to prove things don't work out for us. Like, we could talk about, you were so sick, you almost died. You can either prove, see, bad things can happen. You never know when something bad will happen. Or you can take the evidence of, and I made it through that. Yeah. And the steps came exactly how they needed to come. Like, I healed step by step by step until it wasn't like that anymore.
And I have evidence with the way that I've approached it now, that in the most disastrous situations, something comes in profound ways. Miracles happen to show up for me, to take care of me inside of it. I have evidence now that I've proven that a better expression of myself comes out even in the most devastating of times.
But that's because you've consciously gathered good evidence to support the beliefs you want to have.
Yes, that I can actually trust the journey that I'm in with all of the ebbs and flows.
Yeah. But so because you've spent time consciously gathering that evidence, you have a stabilizer inside when things start to shake on the outside.
There's like a storehouse inside of me. And now I make purposeful trips into that storehouse whenever anything feels uncertain and I can feel some sense of anxiety. I'm like, whoa. Where is life for me? How has it always been for me? Let me go sit down in my storehouse and go, oh, I've only come out on top. I've only come out with more beauty. I went through something not too long ago that felt really tragic. And had it happened 5 years ago, probably would have devastated me in an entirely different way and taken me out. Whereas this time there was levels of fear inducing, but there was also this sense of like, no, but I know there is a faithfulness, there is a goodness to life and to God who's involved inside of my story. And even that scenario happening became another one of because on the other side of that scenario, my storehouse grew bigger. Like I have the storehouse that just started expanding, and I'm like, nah, the craziest of stuff can hit my life and only goodness results out of it for me.
Well, and that's something we've fought for, because we've had so many different transitions in our lives. Yeah. And in every season of uncertainty, we've like gone for walks and we've been like, we have declared, and not like name it and claim it, but like reminding ourselves what we will believe. No, good things are going to happen for us. No, I remember when I didn't know what was happening, and we retell the stories of our lives. No, I remember when I didn't know where work was going to come from, and somebody asked me if I could work on their ranch, and that was exactly what I needed. No, I remember when I quit my job, and then all of a sudden there was 5 new clients that I had that showed up at my door. Or I remember, like, we have consciously communicated in a way to stir up hope between each other. Yeah. We've gone on conversations, and we've grieved together. We've been like, this is sad. This is hard. This hurts my heart. And we've also inspired each other and that's something that I do in seasons of uncertainty. I have conversations with people about God, about hope, about what's going good in their lives. And I retell parts of my own story that remind me of my own story.
Yeah. It's interesting because for me, one of the ways that I've come out of spiraling as well is recognizing oftentimes these pessimistic observations are accusations. And they're an accusation against the nature of my God, and they're an accusation against the truth of me and my being. So what that looks like is like this voice of accusation that says, I'm not going to get taken care of, is actually saying, you're not intimately equated with it, you're not intimately connected to a creator or a father that loves you and cares about you and is invested in your life, and you're not worthy enough for something bigger than you to step into your world and to participate with you, and you're not powerful enough to participate in this scenario yourself. So there's multiple levels of lies that are involved inside of these fears, right? And so when I recognize these fears are happening, I'm like, oh, here is a voice of accusation that's spinning the story that doesn't actually align with the history that I have. And again, I'm like, I've gotten better and better at getting disconnected from accusation and getting connected into what's the truth of the nature of God? What's the truth of the nature of my life history? What's the truth of my nature as an individual who has the capacity to show up inside of my circumstances as well? And so that's been very profound, is connecting to my the truth of my identity and the truth of my creator's identity.
Yeah. And I would say, so for me, I'm going to talk about when I was so sick. I was so sick for like 3 years. And so it was very hard for me to connect to God, like the idea that God was good or whatever, because my experience was so loud that it felt like my experience wanted to tell me about God's nature. My experience wanted to say, I don't know if you're going to come through for me. I don't know if you're with me. I don't know if you're involved, you know?
Yeah.
So I had to decide, instead of, and I think the accuser is always wanting to accuse the nature of God. So when I was sick, I heard so much about he doesn't care about you. He won't come through for you. He's not involved in your story. And I actually had to go to, I'm going to look at who he is throughout the ages. I'm going to look at who he is in the Bible, and I'm going to hold on to that as more true than what I'm feeling right now. And the way that works, so it's really helped starting to do this in consulting. You see this happen all the time, where like maybe I will feel like you did something because you didn't care about me. That happens so much in our marriage, where I was like, he doesn't care about me. This clearly proves he doesn't care about me. And then I would find out from you that you thought you were caring about me. You know what I mean? Like in your twisted way. No, I'm just kidding. In your like quirky way. Like maybe I felt like you didn't care about me because you didn't ask about this thing I went to. But meanwhile, you were taking out the trash because you knew that I was going to have a friend over and you didn't want the trash to overspill. Like there was all these ways that you were caring for me that I was not noticing, that I wasn't picking up, and that I didn't realize were happening. And there were lots of times where I didn't feel like you were caring, but it didn't mean there wasn't care there. Yeah. The more I have seen how often we misinterpret things that have nothing to do with God, the more it makes sense that we misinterpret God, because he's not a tangible human being. And so it's very easy to misinterpret him when we have huge emotions about loss. And so I've started actually grounding into, there's a few things like I look at the nature of Jesus. I look at things that are true. Like God has been alive for forever. That feels really secure to me. There is a being that has been around the block. You know, it's kind of like all those movies with like vampires who've been alive for like 2,000 years. Like they know so much. Like they're just so much more wise than everybody else. This is a funny analogy. But God is like so many years old that nothing that happens on the earth surprises him or catches him off guard, or he doesn't know what to do with, or the fact that he came to love us, or that he's forgiving, that even when he was dying, he was forgiving. Like I've started recognizing, do you know how nice it is to have a person, like a being whose nature is set? Like it says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So like he always wants to forgive. That's his nature. He always has grace for us. That's his nature. He loves to love us. He wants nothing to separate us from his love. That nature of God starts to feel so stabilizing inside of me. But I had to grab for something beyond what I felt. And oftentimes, sometimes it's just from a Bible verse or a Bible story where I'll be like, yeah, no, God's always been faithful to people. Like, I'll be like, wow, he was faithful to this person and this person and this person, because that's an attribute of God. He's faithful. And so then I choose to hold on to something that feels stable and long. Because in life, when it's like, oh, well, I didn't know this thing was going to happen. Thank God I know somebody that isn't caught off guard by everything.
Yeah. And, it's not just about some sense of spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm so glad you're bringing that up.
In my process.
It's so funny. I forget to even acknowledge that because I spend so much time grieving out all my pain with God.
Actually feeling,
I feel so much. I sobbed when I was sick. I sobbed maybe every day. God, where are you? Why have you forsaken me? What are you doing?
Yeah. And there's, for us, we're such emotional health people that like when we have spiritual conversations about this aspect, it's not without this deep foundation of like, there's questions that go, like when I talked about, say, my season when we first got married, I remember I went completely, utterly fetal. There was like a couple cry sessions that you listen to as I'm scream crying on a floor, having feels like a breakdown.
Well, you're having like a panic attack probably.
Yeah, total terror about my future. And one of the things that I had to do was I actually had to nurture these parts of myself that felt so abandoned. I'm like, okay, this accusation or this fear, or this lie or this belief system exists only because there's something unrepaired inside of me. It can only stay here because something hasn't been taken care of. And that's where, obviously I learned and you learned to go inward and go, okay, what is the care need? What is the truth that needs to get to this space? Where's the places that I need to give myself compassion and understanding? What's the repair work that needs to happen?
Yeah. So for you, there was all these pockets of feeling alone from your childhood.
Right.
And so really what uncertainty did is it was bringing up all of your abandonment
I feel
folders,
so alone and abandoned.
all of the places. And so for you, it began to be God bring up the memories of where I felt alone and then bring healing into that and help me go love that kid that was alone and even learning to invite people into that alone spot so that you didn't have to live alone, because your panic around life changes really was about being alone as a kid.
Yes. It was the idea of utter abandonment. I'm going to be alone inside of this and everything's too big for me and I can't do all this on my own. And so part of the aspect of that in my own personal journey was as some of this brokenness, this fear, this pain would come up in transitions, I sought out people who had loving, caring hearts, who could share the load with me, and I could invite them into these spaces. And when they could bring the comfort of maybe listening, the comfort of maybe holding me, the comfort of asking good questions,
sometimes
giving
there's
input.
People having stories where they had gone through hard stuff like that and made it.
And all of a sudden, the bridge that was shattered, it was like I was living on this island and there was a bridge that was broken where people couldn't get to me. I slowly rebuilt the bridge where I'm like, people can come and go to this place within me. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's so many people with me. And no matter what happens, most unstable times, the greatest of losses, I have a full community, relational community around me that's going to take me through this. And that for me started shattering the abandonment thing. And in the process, I've gone through the engagement of eradicating the relationship with accusation and getting closer to the truth again of my identity and who God is.
Yeah, I think for me, when uncertainty hits, there's two different things. It brings me back to, I've talked about, I have PTSD. I had a season where I had 25 traumas happen all in a row. And so right now, when anything starts to change, my body takes me right back to when everything changed.
Right.
And that can happen with trauma. So now it could just be a friendship starts to change, or something in our business starts to change, or a friend of mine who has PTSD, they're thinking about moving, and just the idea of moving houses feels so unstabilizing because living in the same house for a long time felt like one thing she could count on.
Wow, yeah.
Even though the house she might move to might be nicer. It still feels like it brings up all of the old, then there's nothing I can count on, and there's nothing stable, and there's nothing. And so there is there is that compassion when change comes up for me. I have that compassion of like, oh, you did go through some really hard things and everything in your life did change. It makes so much sense that you need some stability. It makes so much sense that you want something that feels normal, because I think once I understand why I have such heightened emotions about something, it actually starts to soothe it. Once I start to see myself, and a lot of it is that moment that I start to see myself, that this is bigger than this moment. This isn't just about the job change. This isn't just about the financial change. This isn't just about the marriage change. This is about pain in my past making me feel like I'm not going to be okay. The other thing that I've noticed when change comes up is I go into my little kid, my little girl side of me.
So expression of yourself that's not so an adult brain.
Yep. And it's when I was a kid, there was a lot of intense things that happened in our family, and it didn't always feel like there was a powerful adult to lead through it. So when we go through something that is bumpy or something that happens, immediately my little kid flashes back to, I'm a little kid and no one's going to take care of this. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who went through a very traumatic childhood. And so when something starts to change, she immediately goes into I'm a little kid. I have to make everything happen. I can't count on any adults to help me. So she goes hyper independent, gets on the treadmill internally and is like, what do I do? How do I fix this? How do I solve this? What do I do? How do I make sure I am going to be okay? And so a lot of us, if we can recognize what part of us is showing up from our past and what it's bringing, then we can actually give the love and care to it that it needs.
Yeah, it's really good. I had a thought on something completely different, but I think I lost it. So I'm going to go with this. I know you kind of brought up family. I know that as we get older, we are bound to have uncertainty with our parents, especially.
100%.
And that transition starts happening. I know that as we're getting older, now I'm like, oh, now I'm running into that thing where everyone has to face this, this whole sense of like,
I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know what this is going to look like.
I don't know how this will impact me with whatever goes on for them in their process. And, that is something that no matter where you're at, you're going to face the loss of loved ones. You're going to face that transition of age and stuff like that. And a couple of things come to mind. One, the experience that we're having is finite. It's not infinite. Earth is finite. It's not infinite. We have this sense that it's forever, but our time is very short here. We're having this experience that is very short. And inside of this experience, once it's done, there's actually all this relief from the suffering that we have experienced. It's not forever. And so there's this thing inside of me that's like, okay, if I can actually tell myself it like the whole game is finite and this season has a beginning and end to it. There are beginnings and ends to everything. And I have to fight really hard to stay in
a season forever.
A season forever. And if I actually release control and connect with peace and allow the river to take me, I will move through this much easier, much faster, and I will get to a destination where I will feel so much better inside of it. But again, universally speaking, there's stuff like the loss of parents and things like that. So it's inevitable. So we can either bury our heads
or try to avoid it at all costs. Yes.
But it will come and it will happen. So that to me is a first step is acceptance of, hey,
life ebbs and flows.
Life ebbs and flows.
I remember, so that really is what has brought me comfort. When I saw my uncle go through it, I made the mental note. That was probably 20 years ago, maybe 30. I made the mental note, not 30, I'm not that old, but probably 25. And
when he went through the stuff with his finances and the change in his career,
I made the mental note, accept that this is what life is. So learn how to do it well. So there's one side of us is like, I just want to avoid transition or change ever happening. So I'm going to do everything I can to build a fully stable life. Or another pathway is accept that life has ups and downs, learn how to ride the river through the different rapids. And so for me, I now completely lost what I was going to say. You tossed it back to me. I mean, you didn't toss anything back to me. I just caught the forgetfulness is what I'm saying.
Ride the rapids.
Ride the rapids. The acceptance of it has enabled me to embrace the process of it more. One thing that I keep thinking, I'm doing exactly what you did, which is I forgot what I was saying, but I had another thought too. One of the things that has really helped me is to let go of the how. How is this going to work out?
It's good.
How long is this going to be? How will the pieces fall into place? I remember working this job and I was so mad at the job because I was like, there's no point in me working here because there's no promotion I could get from this job that I would even like. Like, I can't see any options for something that I would like coming from what I'm doing. I was answering phones and I was like, I don't like answering phones. And this company doesn't have any positions in it that even look appealing to me. I wouldn't even want to run the company. Like if I could get the highest promotion, I don't think I'd even enjoy that. And so I felt deeply hopeless because I couldn't see how something would work out. I couldn't see the point of what I was doing now and how that could move forward. And when we're in transition and things are up in the air, we can't see how things are going to fall into place. When I was so sick, I couldn't imagine how I would ever not feel sick again. Like when we're in an intense moment, it feels like it's going to be like that forever. And the thing I've learned is the how is not my job. Yeah. And the how always comes.
Yeah.
There's always a new door. Like when I had that job, a new job opened up that they came and offered me. They actually came asking me to do a job I had never thought of, that I could never have imagined, that was something I would love doing. And then that job led to something else I would love doing. And that job led to something else I would love doing. There was a pathway when I saw no pathway. When I was sick and I saw no pathway out, there was a pathway through. When I saw no pathway through, when I was in PTSD and I saw no way out, and I literally thought, am I going to feel this way forever? Am I going to feel this broken forever? No, there was a pathway out. Now, our seasons don't always take the amount of time we want them to. And it doesn't always make sense in the amount of time we want, but it is not our job to carry the how. And when I have to figure out how my life is going to work out and how the steps are going to fall into place and how I'm going to get from A to Z, I have so much hopelessness because I feel like a little kid who's being asked to provide all the money for the family. Like I didn't have the ability to do it. It feels like way too much pressure for me to have to know all of the impossible things in my story. And so it's so good to, like we're talking about, go back and see, hey, I didn't know how it was going to work out here and it worked out. Hey, I didn't know how I was going to find a job here. I remember when we got married. I
got to stop you.
Okay.
I'm having anxiety about your rant that you're on because I have something I have to say.
Okay, go ahead.
I was sitting here being like, oh my God, stop talking. I'm going to forget what I need to say.
This is the most ADD episode. Okay.
But one of the things is people are really worried that they're going to miss it. So oftentimes we're in anxiety about the how because we're like, if I'm not hyper vigilant, somehow it's going to pass me by and I'm just going to miss it and I'm going to get stagnant and I'm going to get stuck inside of this. So I need my hypervigilance to keep me on edge.
I need to make sure I find it because it will pass me by without me being aware.
So one of the things that I have been working on, instead of figuring out the how and worrying about the idea that I might miss it, is how do I be present? And that going back to now a 16-year life journey of asking that question from my spiritual mentor, being like, Justin, you just need to live in this present moment. What is this? Because like when I can connect in to this very specific moment, then I can begin to operate out of what I'm feeling, my gut telling me to do, and what is being presented in front of me. And so to me, I have a greater chance of missing it, so to say, when I'm caught up in fear and worry, not connected to myself, because I'm busy reacting versus responding to the circumstance that's at hand. And I look back at when we were even that first year of marriage, when I was in anxiety about it, I wasn't getting a how first and foremost in that. And I was missing out on what that season was presenting to me. So I was missing the joy in some ways of just getting a full year off of all work to be present with my new marriage. And I had that in the previous season where I was working for someone. And for that 2 years, it was a bunch of like basically frat guys getting to live the dream of not having real responsibilities in some ways and travel the world. Hard. There was tons of hard work and responsibility, but it was a different type of responsibility. Didn't feel like I was responsible for my entire future. I was just like, we're all kind of working hard and then playing together and being guys, right? But inside of that, I was in so much fear and worry that I might
when you were working for them, what if I miss my whole career?
What if I miss my whole career and miss the next seasonal shift, that I'm like, man, how much of that did I not enjoy the adventure of?
Because you were so scared of your future.
Yes, exactly. And so this, to me, one of the major solutions to this is, how do I get present in this moment? And being present in this moment might come with me having to process grief, process pain, and that embracing of that is like, oh man, I am extracting the fullness out of this season. Again, I say season because it has a beginning and an end. Because I'm present with myself, I can extract something out of this season, learn something from it, and have a very beautiful experience of what it reveals inside of me, and have an experience of the encounters that I have along the way inside of it.
Yeah. I mean, Paul Young talks about future tripping, which is when we can't see a how, we often fill in. When there's a blank slate in front of us, we often fill it in because our brains are wired for war. We fill it in with all of the worst case scenarios.
So we take a trip into the future, pack our bags and go there.
Yeah. And we're imagining I'm going to lose everything. Nothing will ever work out for me. Everything's going to fall apart. And so I will spend time like, how could this work out for me? How could this be for me? And when you get even better at it, you stop thinking about the future and you're like, I'm just going to take it a day at a time.
Yeah.
What do I do today? How do I connect to myself today? Even us right now, there's a couple things that we're really trying to pray about for the future.
Yeah.
And the way that you're processing it is, how do I get present with myself right now?
Yeah.
Because my intuition, if I'm connected to myself, my intuition is a good leader.
Yeah.
If I'm connected to myself, I hear an internal voice. I hear the voice of the divine leading me.
Yeah.
So I need time to be connected to myself, which means not thinking about my future, not thinking about my past, but actually being in this present moment. And the more connected I am to me, the more connected I am to flow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the biggest game changers to it all is, can I be present with myself? And I think most people have a very difficult time being present, and we're lost on phones. We're lost in politics.
It's so hard.
Even when it comes to, like, say, the season that we're coming on with elections and stuff like that, people are getting really disconnected from themselves, lost in the possibility of what this next election, and that happens every 4-year cycle. We go off in that, rather than like, no, this is just one more of those distractions that's going to keep you disconnected from being present with yourself. Mm-hmm. Because no matter what happens, I cannot control the bigger aspects of what happens politically, what happens with social unrest, what happens to, like, I can't do all that. So, but I can get back here with me, and I can completely navigate this entirely differently based on how present I choose to be with myself. Mm-hmm. Because I know that there were seasons where I navigated those times really poorly, and there was grace and there was mercy for it, but I could have had an even better experience in the midst of external chaos and still landed right here. I'd still be right here where I'm at, instead of suffering way more than I needed to by being dissociated and panicky.
Yeah. This is what I love about age. You really can look back and see, You can see a lot more than you saw in the beginning. I really thought
that's what I appreciate about getting older. I know that everything's going to be okay.
I'm still laughing about you just being like, stop your rant. I have anxiety.
I felt exactly like you do, you know, when you'll be like, stop, I have to. I was like, I'm Abby right now. This is what it feels like in Abby's body.
No, it's a real thing. Yeah. It's really real.
Yeah.
So it's not your job to know the how.
No.
You don't have to know how things are going to work out for you. You don't have to know what pieces are going to fall into place. You don't have to know what job is coming next. You don't have to know how you're going to step into being all that you were made to be. You don't have to know how your relationship is going to heal. You don't have to know how your finances are going to work out. Your job is to be present and engage with whatever action. Now, we are very action oriented.
Yeah,
so like time. There's a million times that we've done the action that we feel inspired to do. Like, oh, I know the next step is to reach out to these people and ask them if they have any work that they're offering. I know the next step is to talk to this person.
Well, I think about that even with how we built our courses and stuff. It was just this divine inspiration of like, we're supposed to do a course. Let's do Living Fully Alive. We created it super fast and on the fly. It was like that with the Compassion Project. It was like that with Life Consulting Masterclass, where it was just like, we need to do this. Okay, let's do it.
We're going to do it.
We're going to follow that. We don't know how we didn't even know the hows on certain stuff. We're like, just the yeses. And the yeses came with messes. Yeah. But accepting that the yeses come with messes was a really big deal. So we stopped being like, oh, it has to look all pretty. We're like, this is probably going to look really messy along the way, but we're going to say yes to this feeling, this divine spark inside of us, and let it play out. And it's played out beautifully.
And we haven't known the how on any of it.
None of it.
How is this going to all unfold? How do we do every single thing? And it's been a beautiful journey.
And it's that idea of, as we wrap this up, but it's the Field of Dreams idea for anyone who's watched the movie. It's that phrase.
If you build it,
they will come. They will show up. It's like, I'm just going to leap with whatever is inspired inside of me. And I'm going to stay present with what I need to do right now in this moment. And everything will fill itself into place. That is a place of trust. And that is one of the greatest gifts that I've been cultivating in my own soul, is that relationship with trust.
Now, the last thing I'll say is very practical, but when things are uncertain, I do certain things. Like I do things that bring stability. I go to my friend's house that I've been to a bunch and just hang out and watch TV, or I go to the park that hasn't changed, or I go to nature, because in nature you feel your appropriate size, you feel little, and you remember how big the world is.
Yeah.
Or we go to the place we've been walking for 8 years here, you know, like you can find things. And then what I consciously do when I'm doing things that are stable, routines or patterns that we have had, even like us, if we were in a new city, we could still go for a walk and talk because that's something we've done for years, or go for a drive and pray because that's something we've like, do things that remind you that some things are stable. Do things that remind you of old things, so that you get to feel like not everything is shaken. The earthquake hasn't destroyed everything.
Yeah. So good. Well, we're done. I'm done for the day. I'm certain of that. I am certain I am getting out of here.
That was the most ADD for both of us. There's multiple times I forgot what I was saying. There's multiple times you forgot what you were saying.
Yeah.
What a mess.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to taking a nap.
Me too.
It's nap time for Justin and Abi. Goodbye.